Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Tourism AI podcast. I'm back once again, feeling so lucky to be joining Peter, our Tourism AI Network founder, to chat a little bit about how AI is integrated with people, culture, HR, and how it can help you just really streamline your operations in that way. So, Peter, why don't you give us maybe a high level update of how you've been doing, but also tell us a little bit about your background in HR, because I feel like that's something not a lot of people know about you.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. It's certainly not a thing a lot of people know about me, but I actually graduated university with an HR degree. And while I never really worked in HR per se, I've always had an interest in people and culture and those types of things. And I did work for about 5 years for an organization called Merit Contractors Association, which was really an association focused on providing health and dental benefits, training, and other resources for the non-union construction industry in Alberta. So certainly that is a very HR driven organization. It was all about providing HR services. And I learned a lot and spent a lot of time in the HR sort of field there. In fact, had an HR committee that was my most active committee because at the time we were facing labor shortages, which is very something that I know the tourism industry faces a lot. And we certainly didn't have AI back then. We're talking almost 15 years ago now. I'm aging myself, but certainly we now have new tools to help us with the HR challenges that we face. So I think for me, it's a really exciting topic, combining people and technology to solve problems for businesses.
Nice. I love that, Peter. I think especially organizational culture is becoming even more and more important. We've talked a lot about values on the other side of things that we do over at CIPR, and values is really important to us. So I think in terms of being able to use AI to streamline operations, in some of the more head down sort of capacities can really help you liven up your corporate culture with your team and make it a lot more exciting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your thinking is in terms of how AI can help us streamline some of those things? What's the value there? Give us some insight.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to reference a study that just came out literally, I think, just very recently in middle of May. And it was a 2024 World Trend Index annual report. So this was a study created by Microsoft and LinkedIn. And it was just sort of looking at AI at work, amongst many other things. It was a fairly big study, but I really like a lot of the findings in here. And it really speaks to what I believe is the conversation we need to be having, which is things like, for example, one important piece that came out of this study was that 75% of knowledge workers actually said that they used generative AI at work. And that of those, most of them said that they actually only started using it in the last 6 months. So like this is a very new innovation and a very new sort of trend that's happening. But if you go a little bit beyond those high level stats, there's some really interesting things that happen that are sort of come out of it. So first of all, 90% of people said that it helps them save time and allows them to focus on their more important work. 85% of people said it made them more creative. And 83% of people said that it actually made them enjoy their work more. So I think that's a really, really interesting study. And it really speaks to, what I think that the focus needs to be when it comes to AI adoption or driving AI adoption, which is really focus on people and culture first, and then focus on business processes and systems and processes second, and focus on technology third. So I get a lot of people that talk to me about, hey, let's talk about, should I use ChatGPT or should I use Google or should I use, what tool should I use? And it's all about tools and technology. And then I get also a lot of people in tourism or in all sectors actually that say, hey, we'd like to adopt AI. Here's our IT guy. Start talking to him and see where we can take this. And I love IT guys. Has nothing to do with them, but really this needs to be actually driven from the top, and it needs to be about people and culture first. And the way I think that we're going to get large scale AI adoption and buy-in is first focusing on solving individuals' challenges, making work more interesting for people, putting the fun back into work. I mean, so again, I'm going to reference a couple of other things that are important in this study. But there was some data that shows that knowledge workers spend 60% of their time essentially doing administrative work serving other people. So scheduling meetings, following up and responding to emails, following up with an email or writing some kind of note about that meeting we just had, or, very sort of administrative, quite frankly, boring work. And so if they're spending 60% of their time doing that, they're spending 40% of their time inside actual applications and tools to get their job done. And I'm sure out of that 40% of time they're spending in there, probably not actually all of it, 100% of it's actually going to doing the work. So how much time are people actually spending doing the work that they are passionate about, that they love doing? And what kind of different world can we have if we first start off with eliminating all of that sort of administrative people serving work so that people can spend more of their time on doing the work they do and being and that they're passionate about it, they came out to be. So I mean, I think that that's the conversation we need to have. I think if we adopt technologies and adopt solutions that start with people and make their jobs better and easier first, then they're going to be very open and bought and ready to buy in when it comes to, you know, systems and processes and function cross functional tools and other things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of, to your point, really bring people back into what they want to do at work and really find more fulfillment. Maybe it's my age bracket, but I've found that this sort of, I don't want to call it a myth because it's not necessarily a blanket statement, but I think a lot of people get into a certain line of work thinking it will be one thing, and then it, largely because of that administrative burden that many of us experience, they don't love their job as much as they could, even though they're doing what they want to do. It's just they're bogged down in all of these things that they didn't maybe anticipate or they weren't expecting to play as much of a role in. But I think, on a very positive note, AI has a big role to play in actually bringing us back into liking our jobs. So I think that's an amazing thing. And I think in terms of, if there are people who are hesitant to get on board with AI, that's a way that teams can kind of pitch it is, this is an opportunity for you to really get back into doing what you love. Can you speak to that at all, Peter? I know obviously there's a lot of folks who have mixed feelings about AI. We've talked about it on the podcast before. Some people love it, some people don't. I think the BC tourism industry survey found that, people really just weren't paying any attention. But can you speak to that at all? Is there interest? How are people feeling? What's going on
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, it's very interesting because certainly I would say that in my conversations with people, there is fear out there, but there's also excitement. And you know, obviously this report I just cited basically says that 75% of people are using it. And by the way, I didn't get into that stat a little bit more, but what's interesting about that stat is 75% of people report in the survey that they're using AI at work, but the majority of those people are actually using it on their private computers with their own tools because their employers aren't talking about it. So employees are actually voting with their feet, but they're doing some really dangerous things. What they're doing is they're basically using these tools outside of their employer's knowledge. They're maybe not using them right. They don't have policies, they don't have principles that they're supposed to be following. So we don't know what kind of data information they're uploading into their personal computers and what they're moving from their work environment to their personal environment. We don't know what tools they're using and if they're using tools that are, created by, responsible people that have been vetted and companies that we can trust data with. Like there's a lot of risk happening out there. But the point is that employees are moving with their feet and they're not really interested in waiting for their employers to catch up. And I'm going to just share a couple of other interesting stats here because this is this concept that in this study they call BYOAI, which is bring your own AI. So this is like this kind of thing that's happening, and the drivers of this BYOAI movement is 68% of people say they struggle with the pace and volume at work. 46% of people say they feel burnt out and overwhelmed, right? Email overwhelm. 85% of emails are read in under 15 seconds, and the typical person has to read about 4 emails for everyone they send, right? So the point is that like people are just burnt out. There's this digital burnout that's happening. And so they're looking to these tools to help them basically. And I can speak, I say this when I do presentations all the time, is that I consider AI to be a thinking augmentation tool, similar to how glasses are a visual augmentation tool or a hearing aid is a hearing augmentation tool. And quite frankly, just like you put your glasses on, your eyes are going to be less tired. I put my AI on in my brain and my brain is less tired at the end of the day. So I have more energy. I feel more optimistic. I have more ideas. I have more time to be creative and to think. I have more time to spend face to face with people. So all of the things I actually, for me, that matter and I'm passionate about, I have way more time to do. And I don't like doing administrative work all day long, which is kind of what most people's jobs have become, frankly and sadly.
Totally. I think I just want to touch on that creativity piece because, I think as an augmentation tool, it does allow people, and you've noted in the report as well, the findings were that it was making people more creative. I know you are an ideas guy. We call you the visionary over at CIPR. So can you speak a little bit to that creativity piece, that augmentation piece? How is that supporting people to be more creative and have that ideation piece while maintaining that human element?
Totally, yeah. So it's really interesting. So actually, studies have shown that AI is actually more creative than just about any human out there, uh, which is interesting because I always call it the ultimate big picture thinker. If you think about OpenAI or ChatGPT is estimated to be trained on 1 trillion data points. Well, there's no bigger picture thinking than 1 trillion data points, right? So it can make really interesting connections across a lot of different sort of ideas in different realms and different data points, right? And so for a guy like me, as much as I'm creative and a big picture thinker and an innovative kind of guy, it still helps me start off with some ideas. It helps me think about other things. I like to think about, use it as the devil's advocate. What am I missing in my argument? How can I make this stronger, right? So really just helps me augment my already fairly creative mind, I guess. And that's great. But there is a whole group of other people out there in the world that aren't really necessarily naturally creative. And for those people, I mean, this is a huge unlock, right? And so, like, imagine, now you have a new superpower, which is this incredible creativity and your analytical thinking or your, whatever way you think that imagine combining those things. Now you're making some real superhuman kind of stuff happening, right? And so, I think that the number one way I recommend for everybody to use AI is actually as an idea generator, idea augmentation, creative thinker, that type of thing. Ideation is a great way to get started, right? And then after that, it's really the sky's the limit. Then you got to put in the work. So, you asked about the human in the loop. It's like at the end of the day, as big and big picture thinking and creative as AI is, it doesn't understand a lot of the human elements, and it doesn't understand a lot of nuance, and it doesn't understand things in the same way humans do. So that's really where the human comes in, right? And that ability to sort of, I always say the ability of the machine's ability to think, combined with our ability to love and have compassion for one another is when real magic can happen, right? So I think that's kind of really a great starting point for people to start thinking about this. And then, yeah, look, there's some things to fear out there. This isn't about sort of, I always introduce myself as an AI pragmatist. I always say there's AI accelerationists on one side who think AI is the best thing in the world and we must build it out and never stop. And then on the other side, there's AI doomers who think it's the worst thing in the world and we must stop it at all costs, right? Neither of those are helpful positions. So be pragmatic. These tools are here. Think about how they can make your job better. And, I don't think we're eliminating mass jobs as a result of this. There might be a few areas where mass jobs are eliminated, but for the most part, it'll just allow us to spend more time with humans and actually, sort of having those human interactions and solve real problems together, which I think is great.
Yeah, I agree. I like that using it as playing the devil's advocate. I think I'll use that one. But I think to your point, there's a lot of opportunity to almost, I mean, it is not a human, we know that, but I think there's an opportunity there too to see different sides of the equation without maybe having some difficult conversations with colleagues, better understand them, or maybe not. Test it out and see how it goes.
Well, actually, so I'm gonna make a couple comments about what you said. So one of the things I like to tell people all the time is it is not a human.
It is
It
not.
can be very convincingly sounding like a human. It's really important to remember that this is a machine that literally just makes predictions. However, it is actually really useful to actually treat it like a human.
Hmm.
So treat it like your coworker, treat it like your companion, treat it like your, somebody you're bouncing ideas off of. So it's a natural language model. Have natural language discussions with it. Ask it questions, probe, think, again, devil's advocate. Okay, what do you think about this? Whatever. So if the more you treat it like a human, actually, the better outputs and the better results you're going to get. So I think it's sort of one of these funny things that it's definitely not human, and you got to remember that. But the more you treat it like a human, like a coworker, the more you're going to get out of it. And so really, it's a companion. It's a work companion. So instead of bouncing, asking your boss or asking your coworker, you ask your AI. Now you can sort of think in partnership with your AI, come up with some stuff, and then bring it to your coworker or your boss, and it's going to be so much more well thought out, and more developed, and you're probably going to get some positive results out of that.
Yeah, no doubt. We've been talking a lot about being conversational with AI, and to your point, Peter, it does really sound like you get the best outputs rather than trying to treat it like a machine and ask it for different things. I know firsthand my prompting has needed some work, but I'm getting better. I'm getting there. So if you are in the same boat, keep practicing. Back to this report, Peter. Given your background, given the report and kind of the findings, where is the best place to start for folks? Maybe in HR, maybe just operationally. I know we've talked a lot about how the best place to start is, having those conversations, but is there more that we can tell people in terms of how they can get this going?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, certainly selfishly, obviously get in touch with me and I can help you get started. But, sort of jokes aside, I mean, at the end of the day, I really like to think about AI as, first a people and culture situation or problem or thing to deal with. Second, a tasks and processes thing to deal with. And third, a technology thing to deal with. So, the place to start really is just have some conversations with your team. Hey, anybody using AI at work? Hey, anybody curious about this? Hey, anybody want to learn more? Should we, think about going to a webinar? Should we, like just start learning and start having conversations? And by the way, if people are saying, yeah, I'm using it, and I would say it's really important for leaders to be leaders. We're in this interesting time of probably the most transformative change that we'll ever see in all of our lives. Not even probably, for sure. And there's a huge role for leaders to play to sort of lead by example. And a lot of the studies, not just this one, but actually have a study coming out here with WSI, our partners, right away. And it's very interesting because leaders seem very excited about AI. Workers seem a little less excited about AI. But I also think that when you ask people in those studies, unfortunately, I think people are not necessarily always honest. So I think sometimes workers, this study that LinkedIn and Microsoft came up with shows something opposite, which is they're using AI. And so I think that, when you ask people if they're excited, they'll point to their fears, but the reality is they're using it, but they're hiding it. And the reason they're hiding it is because their employers aren't talking about it. Their employers aren't putting out a vision. And so, one, if you're an employee that's excited about AI, start talking about it in your organization. Start a conversation with your boss. Ask him questions. Because really it comes down to every organization needs to cultivate a philosophy when it comes to AI sooner rather than later, and then build policies and principles around that philosophy. And there needs to be some workshopping, there needs to be some change management, there needs to be some education. This isn't just sort of it's a tool we can adopt, here you go, use AI. Just isn't going to work that way, right? This is a major transformation, and we need to think about culture, and we need to think about developing cultures of innovation and transformation.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I will say is AI is a bit of a special case, and I am by no means a corporate culture expert, but what I will say is if your employees are using AI and not telling you, that should probably be a bit of a red flag to you. Not because you should penalize them or anything of the sort, but because you should be in the know about what your employees are doing, and they should feel comfortable enough with you to tell you that they're using it. That's
100%.
not even necessarily exclusive to AI, but just something to keep in mind if
Yeah.
folks in your organization
Yeah,
are.
and I want to point to one stat that's really interesting in context of what you just said, and I don't have it right in front of me, so I might not get the exact number. Oh yeah, so here we go. So 78% of AI users are bringing their own AI tools to work. So this is bring your own AI. More common among small businesses, 80%. It crosses all generations. But what's interesting is 52% of people who use AI at work are reluctant to admit to using it for their most important tasks. And 53% of people who use AI at work worry that using it on important tasks makes them look replaceable. So this is real fear. So, as a leader of an organization, it's like first thing you need to do is you need to let people know that this isn't going to replace them.
Mm.
This is actually going to make hopefully the entire operation more efficient. Hopefully it'll mean they'll have better quality of life at work or better work life balance. Hopefully it'll mean we can generate more profit. So the companies that are leading the charge when it comes to AI innovation and implementation are talking about, I'm going to talk about Moderna. I don't remember their exact stats, but they see this as a major productivity improvement. They're going to come out with so much more than they would have if they didn't have AI. So this isn't about, oh, we're going to replace half our workforce or remove half
Right.
our workforce. It's actually, we're just going to make better use out of people's times and expertise to produce more and be better companies, right? So I think if leaders talk about that and talk about those terms and have some policies and principles. So, and when I talk about AI principles, it's like, our principle is we believe in humans first. And we're here to empower you as a tool, because AI is just a tool to empower our humans to the greatest extent possible. That's a great principle for a company to be thinking about. And that gives a lot of confidence to employees in terms of, okay, now I can have an honest conversation about this, right? So I think we need to really think about the fact that this is creating a lot of fear and anxiety in the world, and leaders have to step up to create a space to allow for good conversations in order actually to get the most out of AI for both the employees and the companies.
Absolutely. And I think in the tourism space, especially, these administrative tasks are important. Do not get me wrong. You need a lot of coordination in the background to make any tourism experience work. But at the end of the day, it is an experience. So if you can get your employees out and speaking with the people that you're trying to, invite as guests to improve their experience, it's gonna do you well tenfold in many different ways. So
Yeah.
I think that has to be the priority in any business, but especially in the tourism space.
Yeah. Agreed 100%.
Nice. Well, Peter, any final words of wisdom for us?
Well, my final word of wisdom is if you haven't embraced AI yet, I used to tell people you're not behind, but you're starting to fall behind. And your employees are voting with their feet, and they're embracing AI with or without you, and probably doing it in ways that are a little bit dangerous to your company. So, my number one or final piece of advice or thought is that if you're a leader in an organization, it's really time to get on the AI bandwagon and be pragmatic about it. It's not about, oh, AI is the greatest thing in the world. It's not about it's the worst thing in the world. It's just AI is here and it's impacting us, impacting our jobs, impacting our workforces, and we need to get in front of it before it steamrolls us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, if people want to reach us, you can find Mr. Peter Pilarski on LinkedIn. He's got lots to say about AI, so would strongly recommend connecting with him there and asking him about how you can get more involved in AI and the Tourism AI Network. You can also reach us online at tourismainetwork.com. We're also on all the socials, so come find us there, Tourism AI Network, real simple for you. And subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Tourism AI podcast. To learn more about the network or get involved, visit our website at tourismainetwork.com or find us on socials at Tourism AI Network. We'll see you there.